The air in the mess hall, Munich's old exhibition hall, is thick with cigarette smoke and desperation. It is December 9th, 1959. The men gathered here are the shareholders of Bayerische Motoren Werke AG, and they are presiding over a funeral. Their company, a once proud maker of world-beating aircraft engines and elegant automobiles, is on the verge of collapse. It is hemorrhaging money, losing millions of Deutschmarks a year. Its product line is a bizarre and incoherent collection of vehicles. On one end, opulent V8, powered sedans like the Baroque Angel, that are beautiful, expensive to build, and sell in trickles. On the other, a strange, egg-shaped microcar with a refrigerator door and a motorcycle engine that, while selling well, carries the faint whiff of humiliation.
The management board, led by Hans Pfeiffer, a man who also happens to represent Deutsche Bank, one of BMW's largest creditors, has a solution on the table. They call it a restructuring plan. Everyone in the room knows it for what it is, a surrender. The plan is a thinly veiled sale of the entire company to their oldest, most powerful, and most successful rival, the Stuttgart-based giant, Daimler-Benz. For the proud Bavarians, it is the ultimate indignity. The sale seems a foregone conclusion. The banks want it. The management is pushing for it. The numbers, on paper, make a grim kind of sense. BMW, as an independent entity, appears to be finished.
This single, desperate moment is the anchor for the entire, improbable story of BMW. It is a story not of linear success, but of perpetual survival of a company that has stared into the abyss time and again, only to be pulled back by a combination of engineering genius, pragmatic desperation, and sheer, stubborn will. How does a company defined by its high-performance aircraft engines, which once gave the German Luftstreitkraft a critical edge in the skies of World War I, find itself on the brink of extinction 40 years later? How does that same company, which would go on to build one of the most beautiful and coveted sports cars of the 1950s, the stunning BMW 507, nearly go bankrupt because of it? And how is it that this icon of German engineering was ultimately kept alive by the meager profits from a licensed Italian bubble car, a vehicle so strange it looked more like a novelty than a serious automobile?
The contradictions are woven into the very fabric of the company. The brand that would later define itself with the iconic slogan, "The Ultimate Driving Machine," found its first footing in the automotive world by building a licensed, rebadged version of a cheap British economy car, the Austin 7. And most profoundly, how did this company navigate the darkest chapter of German history, transforming into a vital armaments producer for the Third Reich, a history built on the immense suffering of thousands of forced laborers from concentration camps, a past that the company would take decades to fully and publicly confront? The story of BMW is not a simple, triumphant march. It is a complex, thrilling, and often morally fraught saga of survival, reinvention, and the relentless, almost obsessive, pursuit of a very specific identity.
To understand the company that exists today, a global leader in the premium segment, a titan of industry, we must first return to that smoke-filled hall in 1959 and ask the question that hung in the air: how did it come to this? And how in the world did they get out? To answer that, we must go back to the beginning. Not to a garage or a workshop, but to the turbulent skies of a world at war.
The origin story of BMW is not a clean, linear narrative of a single visionary founder. It is a messy, complicated convergence of different companies, ambitious personalities, and the immense pressures of a global conflict. The company we know today as BMW AG was not born, but rather assembled from the pieces of other ventures, each contributing a crucial element to its DNA. The official founding date is March 7, 1916, but the roots go deeper and wider.
The story begins with two key Munich-based firms. The first was Rapp Motorenwerk GmbH, founded in 1913 by Karl Rapp. Rapp was an engineer who established his company to produce aircraft engines, a technology in its infancy, but one whose military importance was about to explode with the onset of World War I. Rapp's primary customer was the Austro-Hungarian army, and his engines were intended to power the war effort. However, while Rapp was a capable engineer, his engines were notoriously unreliable, plagued by severe vibrations that made them unsuitable for the demanding new generation of fighter aircraft. The second firm was Gustav Otto Flugmaschinenfabrik, founded in 1910 by Gustav Otto, the son of none other than Nikolaus Otto, the inventor of the four-stroke internal combustion engine. Gustav was an aviation pioneer, building small aircraft in Bavaria. His factory was, in fact, where Rapp's engines were often fitted into airframes. But like Rapp, Otto was not a particularly successful businessman, and his company went bankrupt in 1916. It was from the ashes of Otto's company that a new entity was formed on March 7, 1916, Bayerische Flugzeugwerke AG, BFW, or Bavarian Aircraft Works. It is this company, BFW, that is the direct legal predecessor of the modern BMW AG, and its founding date is the one BMW officially celebrates as its own birthday.
While Rapp and Otto laid the groundwork, the true architects of BMW were a trio of men who brought vision, genius, and capital to the fledgling enterprise. They were not the initial founders, but they were the ones who transformed a struggling engine maker into a world-class powerhouse. Franz Joseph Popp was the indispensable organizer and visionary leader. Born in Vienna, Popp was an Austrian engineer who, during World War I, was assigned by the Imperial and Royal Austro-Hungarian Marine Flying Corps to oversee military contracts in Germany. His job was to ensure the production of aircraft engines for the war effort. He identified Rapp Motorenwerk as a potential supplier, but was deeply unimpressed with its management and the quality of its engines. Recognizing the potential of the factory and its workforce, but also its critical weaknesses, Popp effectively took control of the operation. He was the prime force, the man who saw what the company could be.
Max Friz was the engineering genius. Popp knew that to succeed, the company needed a truly innovative engine designer. In 1916, he poached a brilliant young engineer from Daimler named Max Friz. It was a pivotal move. Friz was tasked with designing a new high-altitude aircraft engine. The result was the BMW 3A, a water-cooled, six-cylinder inline engine that was a masterpiece of engineering. It was remarkably fuel-efficient and, crucially, maintained its power at high altitudes where the thinner air caused other engines to falter. This gave German fighter pilots a significant strategic advantage, allowing them to fly higher and faster than their Allied counterparts. The Fokker D.7, one of Germany's most successful fighter planes, was transformed when equipped with Friz's engine. The success of the BMW 3A was so profound that the German military placed massive orders, securing the company's future and cementing its reputation for high-performance engineering.
Camillo Castiglione was the shrewd financier. A wealthy and influential Viennese investor, Castiglione was the main shareholder in Knorr-Bremse AG, a Berlin-based brake manufacturer. He saw the immense potential in the Munich-based engine works and provided the critical capital that fueled its expansion and restructuring. It was Castiglione who would later orchestrate the complex corporate maneuvers that led to the creation of the modern BMW AG.
The success of Max Friz's BMW 3A engine rendered Karl Rapp's original designs, and indeed Rapp himself, obsolete. In 1917, with Popp now firmly in charge, Rapp Motorenwerk GmbH was renamed Bayerische Motorenwerke GmbH. The name BMW, Bavarian Motor Works, was born. The company adopted a new logo, which evolved from the circular Rapp logo. It kept the black outer ring but filled the inner circle with blue and white quadrants, the colors of the Free State of Bavaria. A persistent myth, likely originating from a 1929 BMW advertisement that superimposed the logo onto a spinning aircraft propeller, claims the design represents exactly that. However, the logo predates that advertisement by 12 years. The design is a tribute to the company's Bavarian home, although the colors are not arranged in the official lozenge pattern of the state flag, as local laws at the time prohibited the use of state coats of arms on commercial logos.
The end of World War I in 1918 brought a halt to aircraft engine production. BMW pivoted to making railway brakes and built-in motors, a move so successful that in 1920, the majority of the company was acquired by the Berlin brake company Knorr-Bremse AG and integrated into its operations. For a brief period, the independent BMW name vanished from the scene. But it was not for long. In 1922, the financier Camillo Castiglione, who was the main shareholder of Knorr-Bremse, made a decisive move. He bought the rights to the BMW company name, the engine construction operations, the production facilities, the workforce, and the blue and white logo. He then took all of these assets and transferred them to a different company he controlled, Bayerische Flugzeugwerke AG, BFW. In that same year, the company, now operating out of BFW's old factory buildings, officially changed its name to Bayerische Motorenwerke AG. The BMW name was back, and the modern company, the legal successor to BFW, was born. This complex series of events, this second founding, is the true origin of the BMW we know today, a company forged not by one man, but by the convergence of engineering, leadership, and finance in the crucible of war. Its DNA was set, a culture of high-performance engineering, born in the thin air of the upper atmosphere. But with the Treaty of Versailles now banning its very reason for existence, that company would have to learn to survive on the ground.
The end of World War I and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919, presented BMW with an existential crisis. Article 198 of the treaty explicitly forbade Germany from having any military air force, and this ban extended to the production of aircraft and, most critically for BMW, aircraft engines. For a company whose entire identity, expertise, and reputation were built on the world-class BMW 3A Aero engine, this was a potential death sentence. The roar of its engines, which had dominated the skies, was silenced. BMW was grounded, and to survive, it had to completely reinvent itself. The company's first attempts at diversification were pragmatic but unglamorous. It shifted its focus to manufacturing railway brakes and industrial motors, a move that kept the factory doors open and led to the temporary acquisition by Knorr-Bremse AG. But this was a far cry from the cutting-edge engineering that defined the company's spirit. A more ambitious pivot was needed, one that would take BMW's engineering prowess from the air to the road. This pivot would happen on two wheels before it happened on four, and it would reveal a core duality in BMW's character that persists to this day, the tension between pure, in-house engineering brilliance and shrewd, market-driven pragmatism.
BMW's first forays into personal mobility were tentative and largely unsuccessful. The company produced a small, two-stroke motorcycle called the Flink, which failed to find a market. It also supplied its M2B15 flat-twin Boxer engine, originally designed as a portable industrial motor, to other motorcycle manufacturers, most notably Victoria Werke AG and Bayerische Flugzeugwerke for its Helios model. The Helios motorcycle was a disaster. Its engine was mounted longitudinally in the frame, in the same orientation as a crankshaft in a car, meaning the rear cylinder was starved of airflow and prone to overheating. The bike was poorly designed and unreliable. When General Director Franz Joseph Popp asked his brilliant chief designer, Max Friz, to evaluate the Helios, Friz's assessment was scathing and legendary. He reportedly told Popp that the best thing they could do with the Helios was to dump it in the nearest lake.
This failure, however, became the catalyst for one of BMW's greatest innovations. Pop and Frizz agreed on a two-pronged approach, a short-term redesign of the Helios to make it sellable, and a long-term plan for an entirely new motorcycle. Frizz, who had been frustrated by the ban on aircraft engine design, threw himself into the new project. In just 4 weeks, by December 1922, he had a full-scale design on his drawing board. His solution to the Helios's overheating problem was a stroke of genius. He took the M2 B15 boxer engine and turned it 90 degrees, mounting it transversely in the frame so that both cylinder heads projected out into the direct airflow, ensuring perfect cooling for both. This simple rotation solved the engine's primary flaw and created an iconic, perfectly balanced look. To this, Frizz added another element of robust, high-quality engineering. Instead of a messy, high-maintenance chain or belt drive common at the time, he designed a clean and reliable shaft drive to transmit power from the 3-speed gearbox directly to the rear wheel. The result was the BMW R32. Unveiled at the Berlin Motor Show in September 1923, it was a sensation. Here was a motorcycle that embodied the same principles of logical, robust, and high-performance engineering that had defined BMW's aero engines. With an engine producing 8.5 horsepower and a top speed of 95 kilometers per hour, 59 miles per hour, it was a strong performer for its day. More importantly, it was impeccably built. All its critical parts were encapsulated, protecting them from dirt and debris, and the shaft drive was far easier to maintain than a chain. The R32 was not just a technical masterpiece, it was a commercial lifeline. It sold well both in Germany and internationally, with early exports going as far as Japan in 1924. It single-handedly saved the company from the brink of obscurity and established the Boxer twin, shaft-drive powertrain that would become the defining characteristic of BMW motorcycles for the next century. The R32 was proof that BMW's engineering DNA could thrive on the ground.
While the R32 was a product of pure, in-house innovation, BMW's entry into the automobile market was a far more calculated and pragmatic affair. The company lacked the resources and facilities to design and build a car from scratch. So, in 1928, it made a shrewd business decision. It acquired the ailing automobile manufacturer Fahrzeugfabrik Eisenach from its parent company, Gothaer Wagen Fabrik. This acquisition gave BMW two crucial assets, a car factory in the town of Eisenach and an existing product. That product was the Dixie 315 PS, a small car that Fahrzeugfabrik Eisenach had been building since 1927. However, the Dixie was not an original German design. It was, in fact, a licensed version of a very popular British economy car, the Austin 7. BMW's first-ever car was, therefore, a rebadged Austin. The Dixie 315 was a simple and modest vehicle, powered by a 747 cubic centimeters, 4-cylinder engine producing about 15 horsepower. BMW's engineers made only minor modifications. The most significant changes were moving the driver's controls from the right to the left side to suit continental European roads and fitting superior Bosch shock absorbers to improve the ride. Despite its humble, borrowed origins, the car was a success. It was affordable, reliable, and perfectly suited to the economic conditions of the late 1920s. It even proved its mettle in motorsport, with a Dixie winning the grueling 5-day International Alpine Rally in 1929, a major publicity coup for the fledgling carmaker. After the acquisition, BMW continued to produce the car, first as the BMW Dixie 315 DA2, and soon simply as the BMW 315. Between 1929 and 1932, when the license from Austin expired, BMW built and sold nearly 19,000 of these little cars, providing a steady and vital revenue stream.
This era reveals the two faces of BMW. On one hand, the company was an idealistic engineering firm, capable of creating a masterpiece of original design like the R32 when faced with a technical challenge. On the other, It was a pragmatic commercial enterprise, willing to buy its way into a new market with a licensed product to ensure its financial survival. One vehicle was born from a stroke of genius, the other from a stroke of a pen on a contract. Both, in their own way, were absolutely essential. This duality, the pursuit of engineering purity balanced against the hard realities of the marketplace, was a lesson learned in the 1920s that would come to define the company's strategy for decades to come. As the 1930s dawned, however, a dark new political reality in Germany would force BMW to pivot once more, this time back to its origins in the sky, but under a far more sinister shadow.
The seizure of power by the National Socialist Party in 1933 fundamentally and irrevocably altered BMW's trajectory. The Third Reich's aggressive and systematic policy of rearmament placed a premium on industrial capacity, particularly for military technology. For BMW, a company whose very origins were in high-performance aircraft engines, this new political landscape presented both an enormous opportunity and a grave moral peril. Over the next 12 years, BMW would transform from a diversified mobility company into a crucial cog in the Nazi war machine, its growth fueled by government contracts and its factories powered by the brutal exploitation of forced labor. This chapter of BMW's history is not a passive tale of a company co-opted by a totalitarian regime. It is a story of active participation, internal conflict, and profound complicity in the crimes of the era.
Almost immediately after 1933, BMW became a major player in the German arms industry. The focus of the company shifted decisively back to its original expertise, aero engines. While production of motorcycles and cars continued for a time, they were quickly overshadowed by the lucrative and strategically vital business of powering the reconstituted German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. To conceal the true scale of this rearmament from the world, which was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, BMW made a shrewd corporate move. In 1934, the Aero Engine division was spun off into a separate, privately held subsidiary, BMW Flugmotorenbau GmbH. As a private limited company, GmbH, rather than a public stock corporation, AG, it was not required to publish its financial figures, effectively hiding the massive influx of government orders from its public balance sheets.
The demand from the Reich Ministry of Aviation was immense, quickly outstripping the capacity of BMW's existing plants in Munich and Eisenach. To meet these demands, BMW embarked on a massive expansion, financed heavily with government funds funneled through secretive state-owned entities like Luftfahrtkontor GmbH Berlin. New, large-scale factories were constructed, designed as camouflaged shadow or woodland plants to be less visible to enemy bombers. The most significant of these were the plant in Allach, near Munich, and another in Dürerhof. The company's growth during this period was explosive. In 1933, BMW had a workforce of just over 6,500 people and generated revenues of 35.56 million Reichsmarks. By 1939, on the eve of the war, the workforce had quadrupled to nearly 27,000, and revenues had surged to 275.5 million Reichsmarks. At its peak in 1944, the company employed over 56,000 people, with revenues hitting 750 million Reichsmarks. The vast majority of this business came from military production. BMW focused on powerful, air-cooled radial engines. After acquiring its competitor Brandenburgische Motorenwerk, BRAMO, in 1939, BMW's portfolio included the workhorse BMW 132, the BRAMO 323 Fafner, and most famously, the fearsome BMW 801. This 14-cylinder, twin-row radial engine was a marvel of power and complexity, capable of producing nearly 1,720 horsepower. It became the heart of one of the Luftwaffe's most formidable aircraft, the Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter, a plane that terrorized Allied pilots for much of the war. Over 61,000 BMW 801 engines were built, making it one of the most produced radial engines in Germany. Later in the war, BMW also began producing one of the world's first operational jet engines, the BMW 003. Alongside this massive aero engine production, BMW also manufactured military motorcycles for the Wehrmacht, such as the rugged BMW R75 sidecar combination, and a standard passenger car for the Army, the BMW 325. Finally, in 1941, the Nazi government ordered a complete cessation of all civilian automobile production, forcing the company to devote its resources exclusively to the war effort.
This massive expansion of production came at a horrific human cost. The German economy, geared for war, faced a chronic labor shortage, a situation exacerbated as German workers were conscripted into the military. To fill the gap, BMW, like most major German industrial firms, turned to a system of forced labor on a staggering scale. By the end of 1944, it is estimated that some 29,000 forced laborers were toiling in BMW's factories, accounting for more than half of the company's entire workforce. These were not willing employees. They were Polish prisoners of war, civilian foreign workers recruited from occupied territories in Western and Eastern Europe, and, from 1942 onwards, prisoners supplied directly by the SS from concentration camps, most notoriously from the nearby Dachau concentration camp. To house this captive workforce, BMW erected its own satellite camps adjacent to its main production facilities, such as the ones at Allach and Dürrhof. The conditions in these camps and on the factory floor were appalling. Laborers were forced to work for up to 12 hours a day, often performing grueling and dangerous tasks. They endured systematic abuse, insufficient food, and squalid accommodation. For the so-called Eastern workers from Poland and the Soviet Union, and the concentration camp inmates, who were at the bottom of the Nazis' brutal racial hierarchy, life was particularly hellish. They were recognizable by their striped uniforms, and even the slightest infraction could lead to violent punishment or death at the hands of their guards. The mortality rates among these groups were exceptionally high, with many dying from exhaustion, starvation, or execution.
The company's management was not a passive observer in this system. It actively sought out this labor source. The leadership made efforts to receive concentration camp prisoners and adopted a technocratic approach focused on efficiency, in which the use of forced labor was tacitly approved and accepted. People were treated not as human beings, but as a disposable resource, to be worked until they were no longer productive and then shipped back to the camps to be disposed of. This was not a peripheral activity. It was central to BMW's ability to meet the production targets set by the Nazi regime. The story of BMW's general director, Franz Joseph Popp, adds a layer of complexity to this dark chapter. Popp, the man who had guided the company since its inception, was no ideologue. He joined the Nazi Party in 1933, but he did so under pressure, stating it was necessary to prevent his removal from his post. He was deeply skeptical of the complete reorientation of BMW towards armaments production, fearing that it made the company dangerously dependent on a single customer, the Nazi state, and that this over-reliance could threaten the very existence of BMW AG if there were any setback to aircraft engine production. His skepticism turned to open defiance in 1941 when the government ordered the halt of all civilian car manufacturing. Popp refused, arguing for the need to maintain a civilian business. This act of resistance, combined with production shortfalls that put him in direct conflict with powerful Nazi officials like Luftwaffe Field Marshal Erhard Milch, sealed his fate. Milch accused Popp of sabotage and refusing to perform his duty. In January 1942, the supervisory board forced Popp to take a leave of absence, effectively removing him from power. He narrowly avoided being sent to a concentration camp himself, a fate that befell other dissenting industrialists. Popp's story shows that there was internal dissent, that choices were possible. However, his removal also demonstrates that such resistance was ultimately futile. The corporate and political machine that was driving the war effort crushed him, and his successor, Fritz Hill, fully embraced the system, overseeing the period of the company's most extensive use of slave labor.
This era also introduces a family name that will become central to BMW's post-war story, Quandt. Herbert Quandt, the man who would single-handedly save BMW from a takeover in 1959, was the son of Gunther Quandt, one of the most powerful and ruthless industrialists of the Third Reich. Gunther Quandt built a massive fortune supplying the German military in both world wars. He joined the Nazi Party, cultivated close relationships with its leadership, and was named a Wehrwirtschaftsführer, War Economy Führer. His vast industrial empire, which included battery manufacturer Varta and stakes in Daimler-Benz, thrived on the Nazi war economy. His factories extensively used forced labor from concentration camps, and he profited handsomely from the Aryanization program, acquiring businesses that had been seized from their Jewish owners. This connection creates a profound and uncomfortable paradox at the very heart of BMW's story. The company's survival and growth during the Nazi era were built on a devil's bargain, an active and profitable partnership with a murderous regime. And the family fortune that would later be used to rescue the company from the ashes of its post-war failure was itself deeply stained by that same dark history. The wealth that enabled BMW's Phoenix moment was forged in the same fires of war and exploitation. For many years after the war, like most of German industry, BMW was slow to confront this chapter. It was not until the 1980s and beyond that the company began to seriously and publicly investigate its past, eventually becoming a founding member of a foundation to compensate former forced laborers and creating a permanent exhibition to ensure this history is never forgotten.
The end of World War II in 1945 left BMW in a state of near-total annihilation. As a classified armaments company, it was a primary target for Allied retribution. Its main plant in Munich was heavily bombed. Other facilities, like the aero engine plant in Alack, were occupied by Allied soldiers and systematically dismantled, their machinery and tools shipped all over the world as war reparations. The company's most important automobile factory in Eisenach, the birthplace of the Dixie, was now located on the wrong side of the new border, in the Soviet-occupied zone that would become East Germany. Once again, BMW was banned from producing its core products, aircraft engines, and, for a time, automobiles. The company that had built some of the most advanced engines in the world was reduced to making pots, pans, bicycles, and agricultural machinery out of its Munich Milbertshofen plant, just to keep a skeleton crew employed. Good connections between senior BMW managers and the U.S. military authorities saved the company from being completely liquidated, but its future was precarious at best. From these ashes, BMW would embark on the most contradictory and desperate decade of its existence, a period defined by two vastly different automobiles that perfectly encapsulate the company's schizophrenic struggle for survival.
The story of the BMW 507 begins in New York with a man named Max Hoffman. Hoffman was a legendary and hugely influential importer of European cars to the United States. He had an uncanny sense of the American market and was personally responsible for convincing manufacturers to create some of the most iconic sports cars of the era, including the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing and the Porsche 356 Speedster. In the early 1950s, Hoffman saw a gap in the market for a stylish German sports car that would slot between the prohibitively expensive Mercedes-Benz 300 SL and the more affordable but less sophisticated British roadsters from MG and Triumph. He pitched the idea to BMW. The result, designed by the German-American industrial designer Count Albrecht von Goertz, was the BMW 507. Unveiled in 1955, it was an absolute masterpiece. With its long, flowing bonnet, muscular haunches, and elegant proportions, many still consider it to be one of the most beautiful automobiles ever created. It was an instant sensation, a symbol of glamour and style. The car became a must-have for the rich and famous. Its most famous owner was undoubtedly Elvis Presley, who bought a white 507 while stationed with the U.S. Army in Germany in 1958. Legend has it that he grew so tired of adoring female fans leaving lipstick-smeared messages on the chalk-white paintwork that he had the car painted red.
But behind the glamour was a financial catastrophe. Max Hoffman had originally envisioned the car selling for around $5,000, and he projected that BMW could sell 5,000 units a year in the U.S. market. He was disastrously wrong. The 507 stunning body was made of hand-formed aluminum, and the manufacturing costs were astronomical. BMW simply could not mass-produce the car efficiently. The final sticker price soared to over $10,000, equivalent to nearly $100,000 today, placing it in the same elite territory as the Mercedes 300 SL it was supposed to undercut. Sales never materialized. Instead of the thousands Hoffman had predicted, BMW managed to build and sell a mere 254 examples of the 507 over its entire 4-year production run. Worse still, even at its exorbitant price, BMW lost money on every single car it sold. The 507, along with the equally unprofitable 501 and 503 Baroque Angel sedans, became a financial black hole, draining the company's limited resources and pushing it to the absolute brink of bankruptcy. In 1959, the 507 project alone contributed to a staggering loss of 15 million Deutschmarks. The car designed to be BMW's halo was instead its cross.
While the company was bleeding money on its glamorous V8 sports car, it was being kept alive by a vehicle that was its polar opposite. In a move of sheer desperation and pragmatism, BMW's management team, while visiting the 1954 Turin Motor Show, spotted a strange little car on the stand of an Italian company called ISO SPA, a firm that primarily manufactured refrigerators and motor scooters. The car was the Isetta. It was a tiny, egg-shaped bubble car, so named for its large, curved windows. Its most peculiar feature was its single, front-opening door, which was hinged on the side and took the entire steering column and instrument panel with it as it swung open. It was powered by a tiny, single-cylinder motorcycle engine. It was the absolute antithesis of everything BMW stood for: performance, luxury, and sophisticated engineering. Yet, it was exactly the right car for the right time. In a post-war Europe, still recovering from devastation, what people needed was not a $10,000 sports car, but minimalist, affordable, and incredibly frugal transportation. BMW bought the license and the entire body tooling from ISO and, in 1955, began producing its own version. BMW re-engineered the car significantly, swapping ISO's two-stroke engine for its own more reliable 247 cubic centimeters four-stroke single-cylinder engine from the R25 motorcycle. The BMW Isetta was an immediate and massive success. In West Germany, it had the added advantage that its small engine meant it could be driven with a motorcycle license, opening it up to a huge market of buyers who couldn't afford a full car license. It became the world's best-selling single-cylinder car, with BMW producing a remarkable 161,728 units between 1955 and 1962. The modest but steady profits generated by this quirky, undignified bubble car were the only thing keeping the lights on at BMW. The Isetta, the terrible car that saved BMW, provided the crucial cash flow that allowed the company to survive the catastrophic losses incurred by the beautiful 507.
By 1959, this internal contradiction could no longer be sustained. The company was functionally bankrupt. This brings us back to that smoke-filled hall in Munich on December 9th. The management's plan to sell the company to Daimler-Benz was on the table, and the vote seemed a mere formality. But then, the unexpected happened. A small group of minority shareholders, dealers, and worker representatives began to fight back. Led by a passionate lawyer named Eric Nold, they refused to be railroaded. For 10 grueling hours, They subjected the management's plan to intense scrutiny. They questioned the valuation of the company's assets. They challenged the balance sheet. And in a moment of high drama, they uncovered an accounting discrepancy. The development costs for a promising new small car, the BMW 700, had been improperly booked against the 1958 accounts, making the company's financial situation appear even more dire than it was. This revelation cast doubt on the entire rationale for the sale and gave the opposition the ammunition it needed to stall the proceedings.
Watching all of this unfold was Herbert Quandt. As the scion of one of Germany's wealthiest industrial families, Quandt was a major shareholder, owning about 30% of BMW and, complicating matters, about 10% of Daimler-Benz as well. His bankers, his advisors, and even his family were telling him to approve the deal. It was the logical, financially prudent thing to do. Selling his BMW shares to Daimler-Benz would have been an easy and profitable exit. But as the meeting wore on, Quandt was moved by the passionate resistance of the small shareholders and the fierce loyalty of the BMW workforce, who feared their jobs would be lost in a takeover. He saw a flicker of life in the dying company. In a last-minute decision that would become the stuff of corporate legend, Herbert Quandt went against all advice. He stood up and announced that he would not be selling his shares. Instead, he would be increasing his stake in BMW to 50%, committing a huge portion of his family's personal fortune to save the company. With that single, audacious act, the Daimler-Benz takeover was dead. Herbert Quandt had single-handedly saved BMW from extinction. It was a decision rooted not in a cold financial logic, but in a gut feeling and a belief in the brand's potential. It was the ultimate Phoenix moment, a rescue from the ashes made possible by the profits of an ugly duckling car, the passion of a few small shareholders, and the high-stakes gamble of one man. This man, whose family fortune was inextricably linked to the darkest chapter of Germany's past, had now become the White Knight of Bavaria's most cherished industrial icon. The stage was set for BMW's greatest reinvention.
Herbert Quandt's dramatic intervention in 1959 was more than just a financial bailout. It was a vote of confidence in a future that, at the time, existed only on drawing boards inside BMW's design studios. His investment was a bet on a new generation of cars, a new E-Class or new class, that would not only rescue the company, but would completely redefine its identity and create the blueprint for the modern BMW. The 2 decades that followed this near-death experience represent the true golden age of BMW, a period of explosive creativity and growth where the scattered, contradictory elements of its past finally coalesced into a singular, powerful brand identity, the ultimate driving machine.
At the 1961 Frankfurt Motor Show, just 2 years after the company had nearly been sold for scrap, BMW unveiled the car that would change everything, the BMW 1500. This was the first model of the new E-Class, and it was a revelation. It was a compact, 4-door sedan with clean, modern lines penned by a team led by designer Wilhelm Hofmeister. But its true genius lay in its engineering and its character. The new E-Class was a thoroughly modern automobile. It featured a lightweight unitary body construction, a sophisticated independent rear suspension with semi-trailing arms, and McPherson struts at the front, a combination that gave it a superb balance of ride comfort and agile handling. Under the hood was the brand-new M10 engine, a brilliant overhead camshaft 4-cylinder that was both powerful and durable. This engine was so well engineered that, in various forms, it would remain in production for over 2 decades, eventually forming the basis for a Formula One World Championship-winning turbo engine. The BMW 1500 and its subsequent variants, the more powerful 1800, the sporty 1800 Ti, and the range-topping 2000, were an immediate and massive success. They perfectly captured the spirit of the 1960s and filled a crucial gap in the automotive market. They were not cheap, mass-market boxes, nor were they opulent, ponderous luxury barges. They were something new, premium, high-quality sedans built for people who love to drive. The new E-Class effectively created and defined the sports sedan segment, a category of car that BMW would dominate for the next half-century. The commercial success was staggering. The company that had been bankrupt in 1959 was now struggling to meet demand. Between 1960 and 1970, BMW's automobile sales tripled, and its revenue increased more than sevenfold. The new E-Class didn't just save BMW, it built the financial foundation upon which the modern company stands.
The genesis of the legendary 3 Series came in 1966, when BMW launched a two-door version of the new E-Class, initially badged as the 1602. This car was lighter, nimbler, and even more fun to drive. The true magic happened when two separate BMW executives, planning director Helmut Bonch and engine designer Alex von Falkenhausen, each independently had the larger 2.0-liter M10 engine from the 2000 sedan installed in their personal 1602 company cars. When they discovered they'd had the same idea, they presented it to the board, and the legendary BMW 2002 was born. The 2002 was a giant killer. It was small, unassuming, but with its powerful engine and brilliant chassis, it could outperform many larger, more expensive sports cars. It became a massive hit, especially in the crucial North American market, where it cemented BMW's reputation as a builder of fun, driver-focused cars.
The success of the 02 series led directly to the launch of the first official BMW 3 Series, E21, in 1975. The E21 carried forward the 02's sporty character, but in a more modern and refined package. Its design, led by Paul Bracq, introduced styling cues that would become BMW hallmarks, including the now famous Hofmeister kink in the C-pillar and, most significantly, a cockpit with the center console angled towards the driver, emphasizing the car's focus on the driving experience. The E21 also saw the introduction of smooth, powerful inline six-cylinder engines to the compact sedan class, a move that set it apart from its rivals. The E21 was followed in 1982 by the even more successful BMW E30. The E30 expanded the lineup to include four-door sedan and touring station wagon body styles, the latter famously starting as an after-hours project by a BMW engineer named Max Reisbach who needed more space for his family vacation. The E30 platform also gave birth to the first, and perhaps most iconic, BMW M3, a homologation special built for touring car racing that became a legend on both the road and the track.
The new E-Class itself is the direct ancestor of the 5 Series. The first generation, the BMW E12, was launched in 1972 as a larger, more comfortable, and more luxurious successor to the original new class sedans. The E12 was designed to compete squarely in the executive sedan market, establishing BMW as a credible rival to Mercedes-Benz in this crucial segment. It was on the E12 platform that BMW Motorsport offered its first widely available high-performance sedan, the M535i, which is considered the direct predecessor to the M5. In 1981, the E12 was replaced by the BMW E28. While stylistically an evolution, the E28 was a major step forward technologically. It was the first 5 Series to feature the driver-angled center console, to be available with anti-lock brakes, ABS, and, significantly, to be offered with a diesel engine, the 524TD, a move that greatly expanded its appeal in Europe. The E28 generation also saw the debut of the first official BMW M5, a hand-built super sedan that featured the powerful inline-six engine derived from the M1 supercar. It was a car that combined the practicality of a four-door sedan with the performance of a true sports car, creating a template that endures to this day.
To take the fight directly to the top of the luxury market, dominated by the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, BMW launched its first flagship sedan, the BMW 7 Series, E23, in 1977. The E23 was designed to be a technological showcase, introducing a host of features to the BMW lineup for the first time. These included an onboard computer to track trip information, a service interval indicator that told the driver when maintenance was due, and a check control panel that monitored fluid levels and warned of system faults. It was also the first BMW to offer ABS and, later in its production run, a driver's airbag. Powered exclusively by smooth straight-six engines, the E23 established BMW as a serious contender in the full-size luxury sedan segment.
This era of product success was amplified by two brilliant branding initiatives that cemented BMW's new identity in the public consciousness. First was the slogan. In the early 1970s, BMW's marketing in North America was disjointed, with different distributors using different messaging. In 1974, seeking to create a unified and powerful brand identity, BMW of North America hired a new advertising agency, Amirati and Puris. The agency, and specifically writer Martin Puris, coined a simple, four-word phrase that perfectly captured the essence of the new cars, the ultimate driving machine. Debuting in 1975, the slogan was a stroke of genius. It brilliantly differentiated BMW from the comfort-oriented luxury of Mercedes-Benz and the quirky charm of other European brands. It spoke directly to the enthusiast, the person who cared not just about getting from A to B, but about the experience of the drive itself. The slogan was a massive success, helping to fuel a nearly five-fold increase in BMW's U.S. sales over the next decade.
Second was the formalization of its motorsport efforts. In 1972, BMW consolidated its various racing programs into a new, dedicated subsidiary, BMW Motorsport GmbH, headed by former racing driver and manager Jochen Nierpasch. The new division's first project was to develop a racing version of the 3.0 CS Coupe. The result was the legendary 3.0 CSL, nicknamed the Batmobile for its wild aerodynamic wings and spoilers. The 3.0 CSL was brutally effective, dominating the European Touring Car Championship for most of the 1970s and establishing the new division's credibility. BMW Motorsport, which would later be renamed simply BMW M GmbH, became the soul of the company's performance image. It was responsible for taking the lessons learned on the racetrack and applying them to road cars, creating a lineage of iconic M cars, the M1, M3, M5, M6. That became the aspirational pinnacle of the brand and the ultimate proof of its famous slogan.
The period from 1962 to the mid-1980s was a perfect storm for BMW. It had the right product at the right time with the new E-Class. It executed a brilliant strategy by expanding that product's DNA into a clear and desirable 3, 5, and 7 series lineup. It found the perfect words to define itself with the ultimate driving machine. And it proved its claims on the racetracks of the world with the M division. This was not just a recovery, it was a complete and masterful reinvention that forged the identity of BMW for the next 50 years.
By the early 1990s, BMW was a resounding success. It was profitable, its brand was synonymous with performance and quality, and its 3, 5, and 7 series models were the benchmarks in their respective classes. Yet, in the rapidly globalizing automotive industry, a new anxiety began to set in. The company was still a relatively small, independent player in a world of giants like Ford, General Motors, and Volkswagen. The prevailing wisdom was get big or get bought. BMW's chairman at the time, Bernd Pischetsrieder, was a firm believer in this philosophy. He calculated that to remain competitive and independent in the long run, BMW needed to dramatically increase its annual production volume from around 600,000 cars to nearly 2 million. This quest for scale would lead BMW to make the most ambitious and ultimately most disastrous strategic gamble in its entire history.
In January 1994, in a move that sent shockwaves through the industry and caused an uproar in the British House of Commons, BMW announced it was acquiring the British Rover Group from its owner, British Aerospace, for £800 million. The Rover Group was the last remnant of Britain's once mighty volume car industry, a sprawling conglomerate that included the Rover car brand, the iconic Land Rover and Range Rover SUV brands, the sporty MG brand, and the dormant Mini brand. On paper, the logic of the deal seemed compelling. BMW executives saw it as a shortcut to achieving the scale they craved. The acquisition would instantly double their production volume. It would give them immediate access to a range of market segments where they had no presence: mass-market family cars, Rover, world-class off-road vehicles, Land Rover, and small cars, Mini. Crucially, it would also provide BMW with expertise in front-wheel drive technology, something the rear-wheel drive-focused German company lacked, but knew it would need for future small cars. The plan was to run Rover as a separate entity, developing refined, comfortable cars that would complement, rather than compete with, BMW's sporty image.
The reality, however, was a catastrophe. The 6-year ownership of Rover, which became known within BMW as the English patient, was a period of immense financial drain and corporate turmoil. The deal failed for a toxic combination of reasons. Cultural clash: BMW's meticulous, engineering-driven, and hierarchical corporate culture clashed profoundly with the more freewheeling, and at times adversarial, industrial culture of Rover's plants in the British Midlands. The Germans were seen as arrogant, and the British as inefficient. This led to mistrust, miscommunication, and a painfully slow integration of purchasing, engineering, and manufacturing processes. Economic headwinds: the timing could not have been worse. Shortly after the acquisition, the value of the British pound began to strengthen significantly against the German Deutschmark and other European currencies. This had a devastating two-pronged effect. It made Rover's cars, which were exported from the UK, hideously expensive and uncompetitive in its key European markets, while simultaneously making imported cars from continental Europe cheaper in the UK, eating into Rover's domestic market share. By 1999, BMW was reportedly losing £1 million a day on currency fluctuations alone. Product missteps: BMW made critical errors in product strategy. The Longbridge factory, Rover's main plant, was a vast, aging facility that desperately needed a high-volume new model to be profitable. Instead of fast-tracking the development of the R30, the planned replacement for the high-volume Rover 200 and 400 models, BMW prioritized the development of the more upmarket, lower-volume Rover 75 saloon. While the 75 was an excellent car, it was the wrong car to save the factory. The R30 project was delayed, and Longbridge continued to operate far below capacity, bleeding cash. A bottomless pit. Ultimately, the Rover brand was not strong enough to command the premium prices needed to be profitable, and its factories were simply too inefficient. The entire venture became a financial quagmire. It's estimated that BMW poured over £3 billion, around 15 billion Deutschmarks, into the Rover Group during its 6 years of ownership, with little to show for it but mounting losses. Pischetsrieder, the architect of the deal, was forced to resign.
By March 2000, BMW had had enough. The new chairman, Joachim Milberg, concluded that the Rover brand was not strong enough to perform the tasks intended for it, and announced that the group would be broken up. It was a public admission of a colossal failure. Land Rover was sold to Ford for a cool £1.8 billion, $2.7 billion, allowing BMW to recoup a significant portion of its initial investment. The core car business, Rover and MG, was sold to a British consortium of businessmen called the Phoenix Consortium for a symbolic £10. To get the albatross off its neck, BMW even provided the new owners with a massive dowry, an interest-free loan of over £400 million, and a large stock of unsold cars to keep the business afloat. The Phoenix-led MG Rover would limp on for 5 more years before collapsing in a cloud of scandal in 2005.
It looked like a complete rout. But out of the wreckage of its greatest failure, BMW managed to pull off 2 of its most brilliant successes. It had the foresight to keep 2 jewels from the Rover crown. BMW recognized the immense global appeal and heritage of the Mini brand. Instead of selling it off, BMW retained the rights to the name and the modern production facility at Cowley, Oxford. Crucially, they did not try to simply update the old Mini. They completely reimagined it for the 21st century. Launched in 2001, the new Mini was a triumph of brand resurrection. Designed by American Frank Stevenson, it brilliantly captured the spirit, charm, and go-kart handling of the 1960s original, but in a larger, safer, and thoroughly modern package. It was a premium small car, not a cheap one, and it was endlessly customizable, allowing owners to express their individuality. BMW had learned its lesson from the Rover culture clash. It didn't try to make the Mini a German car. It celebrated its British heritage, built it in Britain, and marketed it as a cool, fun, and quintessentially British icon, all while underpinning it with German engineering quality and reliability. The new Mini was an instant global smash hit, becoming a hugely profitable new pillar for the BMW Group and a case study in how to successfully revive a historic brand.
The second masterstroke was even more audacious. In 1998, while still mired in the Rover mess, an opportunity arose. The British conglomerate Vickers decided to sell its luxury car division, which included both Rolls-Royce and Bentley. BMW was the logical and expected buyer. It already supplied the V8 and V12 engines for their cars and had a strong working relationship. But at the last minute, BMW was outmaneuvered. Its arch-rival, Volkswagen, swooped in with a higher bid, offering £430 million to BMW's £340 million. VW seemingly had won. It acquired the historic factory and crew, the vehicle designs, the famous Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament, and the iconic Rolls-Royce grille-shaped trademark. But there was a critical, overlooked detail. VW had bought the factory and the parts, but it had not bought the most valuable asset of all, the Rolls-Royce name and logo. These trademarks were controlled not by the car company, but by the entirely separate Rolls-Royce plc, the aero engine manufacturer. And Rolls-Royce plc had a very strong business relationship with BMW, its partner on several jet engine projects. In a stunning move, Rolls-Royce plc announced it was licensing the exclusive rights to the Rolls-Royce name and logo to BMW for a mere £40 million. This left Volkswagen in an impossible position. It owned a factory that built Rolls-Royce cars, but it was legally forbidden from calling them Rolls-Royce. To make matters worse, BMW held the contract to supply the engines and could cancel it with just 12 months' notice, leaving VW with no way to power the cars it had just bought. Checkmate. A complex negotiation ensued. The final deal was a masterstroke for BMW. Volkswagen would get to keep the Bentley brand and the historic Crewe factory, which was a better fit for VW's portfolio anyway. In exchange, VW sold the rights to the Spirit of Ecstasy and the grille design to BMW. BMW agreed to continue supplying engines until the end of 2002. This gave BMW time to execute its own plan. It built a brand new, state-of-the-art factory on the Goodwood estate in southern England, developed an entirely new flagship car from scratch, and on January 1, 2003, launched the breathtaking Rolls-Royce Phantom. The move successfully re-established Rolls-Royce, under BMW's stewardship, as the undisputed pinnacle of automotive luxury.
Having survived its near-death experiences and the disastrous Rover acquisition, BMW entered the 21st century a transformed company. It was now a multi-brand powerhouse, with the core BMW brand flanked by the successful Mini and the ultra-luxury Rolls-Royce. The company was financially robust, and its reputation for engineering excellence was stronger than ever. However, the automotive world was on the cusp of its most profound disruption in a century, and BMW would find itself fighting new battles on two major fronts, a familiar one against its traditional German rivals, and a new, existential one centered on the transition to electric mobility.
For decades, the global luxury car market has been dominated by a triumvirate of German brands: BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi. While all three are known for their engineering, quality, and prestige, they have cultivated distinct brand philosophies that appeal to different types of buyers. This rivalry is a constant, driving innovation and often spilling over into playful but pointed marketing battles. BMW. True to its heritage, BMW's identity remains firmly rooted in the concept of the ultimate driving machine. The brand's core philosophy is to deliver a dynamic, engaging, and driver-centric experience. BMWs are typically characterized by sharp, responsive handling, powerful engines, and a rear-wheel drive bias that prioritizes performance feel. The suspension is often tuned to be firmer, and the cockpit is designed around the driver, creating a more intimate connection between human and machine. It is the choice for the enthusiast who values the act of driving itself. Mercedes-Benz, as BMW's oldest and most direct rival, Mercedes-Benz occupies the other end of the German luxury spectrum. Its philosophy is centered on comfort, opulence, and pioneering safety and technology. A Mercedes is engineered to isolate and cosset its occupants. The ride is generally smoother and more compliant. The interiors are more lavish, and the focus is on effortless, refined travel. While its AMG Performance division builds incredibly powerful cars, the core brand identity is one of timeless elegance and status, often seen as the choice for those who have arrived and may prefer to be driven. Audi. As a member of the vast Volkswagen Group, Audi has strategically positioned itself as the progressive, tech-forward balance between its two main rivals. Audi is renowned for its cutting-edge technology, most notably its Quattro all-wheel drive system, which provides superb traction and all-weather security, and its highly praised virtual cockpit digital displays. Its design language is often described as sleek, modern, and minimalist. The driving experience is a carefully calibrated compromise, more comfortable than a typical BMW, but sportier than a standard Mercedes. Audi appeals to the buyer who values sophisticated technology and understated, modern design. This intense competition has famously led to billboard wars, particularly between BMW and Audi in the 2000s. These public marketing clashes, involving dueling billboards with witty and competitive slogans like "Your Move," BMW, and the retort "Checkmate," have become a celebrated part of their rivalry, showcasing their fight for brand supremacy in a creative and engaging way.
The greatest challenge facing BMW and its rivals today is the shift to electric vehicles, EVs. This transition threatens to upend the traditional hierarchies of the automotive world and has forced every manufacturer to rethink its core strategy. While many competitors, including Mercedes-Benz and Volvo, made bold pledges to go all-electric by a specific, aggressive deadline, BMW has deliberately pursued a more cautious and flexible strategy dubbed the power of choice. Instead of betting the entire company on a single powertrain technology, BMW has invested heavily in developing flexible vehicle architectures that can accommodate traditional combustion engines, plug-in hybrids, PHEVs, and fully electric BEV powertrains, often on the same production line. BMW's CEO Oliver Zipse has publicly argued that an EV-only strategy leads to a dead end, and that this flexibility allows BMW to adapt to the very different speeds of EV adoption in various global markets, such as Europe, the US, and China. This measured approach appears to be paying off in a volatile market. While some rivals have had to walk back their aggressive EV targets due to slowing demand, BMW's EV sales have continued to grow strongly. In 2024, the BMW Group delivered over 593,000 electrified vehicles, BEVs and PHEVs, with 426,594 of those being fully electric, a significant 13.5% increase over the previous year. This performance has allowed BMW to outpace its German rivals in the EV space, selling more BEVs in 2024 than Mercedes-Benz and Audi combined. In early 2025, BMW even surpassed EV pioneer Tesla in monthly sales in the crucial European market, a significant milestone. However, the path is not without its challenges. The EV market is facing headwinds, including the reduction of government subsidies in key markets like Germany, which has led to a slowdown in demand. Competition is intensifying, particularly from new, highly competitive Chinese brands like BYD. Furthermore, the threat of international tariffs and operational issues, such as a production stoppage in 2024 related to an integrated brake system, continue to pose risks to sales and profitability.
To meet these challenges and define its future, BMW is embarking on its third great transformation. In a deliberate and powerful nod to the car that saved the company in the 1960s, BMW's next-generation, dedicated EV platform is named the new E-Class. This is not just a new set of models. It is a complete rethinking of the automobile, centered on three pillars: digitalization, electrification, and circularity, sustainability. The new E-Class rollout is imminent. Production is set to begin in late 2025 at a new factory in Debrecen, Hungary, with the first model being a mid-size electric SUV, confirmed to be the next-generation 9/3. This will be quickly followed in 2026 by a sporty sedan at the very core of the brand, the electric successor to the 3 Series, likely to be called the i3, which will go on sale for the 2027 model year. This new platform is a technological leap forward, designed from the ground up for electric vehicles. Its key innovations include Gen 6 battery technology, a new generation of cylindrical battery cells that promise a 20% increase in energy density, up to 30% faster charging speeds, on an 800-volt architecture, and up to 30% more driving range compared to current BMW EVs. Panoramic Vision and iDrive X, a revolutionary new interior concept that does away with the traditional instrument cluster. Instead, key information is projected across the entire lower width of the windshield in the driver's line of sight. This is complemented by a large central touchscreen and a new, highly advanced iDrive operating system. Heart of Joy Control Unit, a new, centralized high-performance computer that integrates all the software for the drivetrain and driving dynamics. This promises to increase efficiency and deliver an even more responsive and authentic BMW driving feel.
Today, the BMW Group is in a position of strength. In the full year 2024, the group sold 2,450,804 vehicles worldwide. The core BMW brand sold 2,200,177 cars, successfully defending its title as the #1 premium automotive brand in the world, ahead of both Mercedes-Benz and Audi. The company's sales are globally distributed, though recent trends show a shifting landscape. The data reveals a resilient performance in Europe and the Americas, but a significant challenge in China, its largest single market, where sales saw a double-digit decline in 2024 due to a slowing economy and fierce competition from domestic brands. Financially, the company remains robust. For the 2023 fiscal year, the BMW Group reported revenues of €155.5 billion and a profit before tax of €17.1 billion, with a strong EBIT margin in its automotive segment of 9.8%. This profitability provides the foundation for the massive investments required to fund the transition to the new E-Class.
The history of BMW is a story of 3 great transformations. The first was a forced pivot in the 1920s from the skies to the ground, where the company learned to apply its engineering DNA to motorcycles and cars to survive the aftermath of a world war. The second was its spectacular reinvention in the 1960s, rising from the ashes of near bankruptcy to create the modern sports sedan and forge a powerful, enduring identity as the ultimate driving machine. Today, BMW is in the midst of its third great transformation. It is navigating the monumental shift from the internal combustion engine to an electric, digital, and sustainable future. Its chosen path, a flexible, multi-powertrain strategy, stands in contrast to many of its rivals and appears, for now, to be a shrewd and successful hedge in a volatile global market. The future of the company rests on the success of the new E-Class. The name itself is a powerful statement, a deliberate echo of the pivotal moment that saved the company 6 decades ago. It signals that BMW views the current challenge not merely as an evolution, but as another fundamental revolution, one that requires the same blend of engineering innovation, strategic daring, and unwavering focus on the core character of the brand. The ultimate question remains: can the company that defined the driving machine for the 20th century successfully reinvent it for the 21st? History suggests that betting against BMW's ability to survive and transform is rarely a wise wager.